Good afternoon. This is Dale, and this is my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects, and I want to welcome you to the channel and just ask that if you haven't done it already, go ahead and hit the like button and hit the subscribe. I really appreciate that. I'm so excited today because we're going to have a special guest on, and this lady, I'm telling you what, she has a vast amount of knowledge in a vast amount of areas, and so we're going to be touching on 2 or 3 different areas today, and so I'm so excited for that. Let me go ahead and pull this up. This was the advertisement for it, and so this is our guest today, the one and only Margie Kay. And so let me go ahead and bring her in real quick. And welcome to the show, Margie.
Oh, thank you, Dale. It's a pleasure.
You're from Missouri.
Yes, or the state of Missouri, depending on the weather.
That's what I was going to say. You know, that's kind of the nickname we had for it when I lived in Illinois. We were all in misery when the weather was rough out there. In fact, you and I were talking about the difference between rain over there and rain over here. Is like I was driving semi a couple times, and I heard the guys on the CB talking about a wall of water, and I had no idea what they were talking about until it hit me, and I couldn't see the road. I literally had to slow the truck down to like 25 miles an hour to even figure out where I was on the road. And so we don't really get rain in Oregon. That's what I have to say. Anyway, but I'm so happy that you're here with us. Let's go ahead and I'll bring back up some of the slides that I have put here. One thing about you, Margie, that I just absolutely admire is all the things that you do. You got Onyx News. You have so many other programs that you've developed, the onyxnetwork.com, the onyxmedia.com. And let me just read a little bit of your bio real quick. Margie Kay is a veteran, 40-year paranormal investigator. She is the owner and CEO of the Onyx Network and the Onyx Media Publishing Companies, serves as Assistant State Director for Missouri MUFON, and serves as the Director of the Oz Institute. She is a licensed private investigator in Missouri and owns and operates a fire inspection company with her husband, Gene Paget. Margie has completed over 570 UFO investigations for MUFON and over 1,700 paranormal and UFO investigations on her own. And so with no further ado, I just want to welcome you to the channel, and I look forward to picking your mind and just really learning from this vast amount of knowledge that you have in so many different areas. But let's go ahead and let's start with your books to start with. Now, these are the 2 books that we're going to be looking at, the Kansas City UFO Flaps, and then also the Fast Movers Evidence of High-speed UFOs and UAPs. And so let's start with the book, the Kansas City UFO Flap. I read some of the samples out of it. I don't have the book, so I was pretty well had to go to your samples. And when you titled that flap, UFO flap, I noticed that in your book you concentrate on the years 2011 and 2012. Is that accurate?
That's the main part, yes, but I do cover some earlier flaps as well, including the airships of 1897 for about 15 years. And then there was a flap in the 50s. And the main one was 2011. And that's when I had been involved with MUFON for a few years. And we got hit with a major flap in Kansas City, which is basically a flap means a large amount of sightings in a short period of time. So within a 1-month period, we had 97 sighting reports that were filed, but many more that weren't filed. Wow. From hundreds or thousands of people that saw UFOs around Kansas City.
If I understand that right, that was the largest amount of sightings in the month of October. You guys had the most
Yeah.
out of anywhere for MUFON International. And so that was pretty profound that you had so many of them. Specifically, I want to focus on one of the sightings, and I was watching UFO Witness with Ben Hansen. I don't know, about last week, somewhere in there, and I was really surprised because all of a sudden, guess who I got to see on the show was Margie Kay, and they were talking. You guys were talking specifically about this soccer mom, and I don't know if she had just dropped the kids off or she was going to pick them up, but all of a sudden she saw, like, I think they said, a light around her car, and when she got out, there was this cube UFO above her car. And what made that so fascinating is that's exactly what Ryan Graves was talking about, that the pilots were reporting were these cubes with a spear within it. Now, I don't know if she had the spear experience, but definitely had the cube. And so can you fill us in on that encounter?
Well, Dale, unfortunately, the Travel Channel embellished that story.
Oh, did they? Okay.
It was about cubes, and the focus was on a Springfield, Missouri cube sighting with an excellent video taken by a witness. It was a man. And we were able to analyze that video, take it apart, prove that it wasn't any kind of a plane or a helicopter, and it was a spinning cube, or perhaps it had more sides than that. It may have had multiple sides, but at any rate, it was something spinning on its axis. And when UFO Witness contacted me to do an interview, they asked me about that case, which I thought was going to be the only case we were discussing, when they asked me about several other things. So we have like a 4-hour interview, and, they show like maybe 4 minutes of that on their show, right?
Yeah.
That's how that works. So during this 4 hours, we talked about some other cases, and there was another case where a woman saw a close UFO during that 2011 flap, and it actually terrorized an entire neighborhood and put a hypnotic trance on about 30 people at the same time in this neighborhood. They did not include that. They turned that into a cube. And it wasn't a cube. So anything, I've had a lot of dealings with Travel Channel, and so have other people I know. You can't trust the output, what the final thing is going to be, if it's going to be accurate or not.
Well, it's kind of like Travis Walton. When they did his, they went in and edited it and changed it and put stuff in it that wasn't even there. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised, because it's like part of Hollywood. So that lady didn't actually see a cube UFO. That was just something that they, oh my goodness, that's heartbreaking. But what you just told us, there's a story even more amazing than what she was telling, but it took place in Springfield instead of near Kansas City, which is where I thought it
did. And that video is out there. It's on YouTube. I also did an interview with the witness and the other investigators on the case. It's on my channel, on my YouTube channel at nextnetwork.com.
Well, I know when we get to MUFON, that's why I know that you're legit as far as your investigation skills, because once we get to talking about MUFON, I'm familiar a little bit with it anyway, and especially with their field inspector's manual, and I know how detailed and how scientific that is. But it is disappointing. I guess they're trying to put a show out there and trying to get viewers, and sometimes they got to hype it and exaggerate the facts. Maury Wood's been on my channel as well, and he pretty much said the same thing that you did, is, you talk for hours and then they take and condense it into 10 minutes, and just don't really get to put the whole story out, which is what's nice about podcasts like this, is we're not going to edit it. We're not going to change it. And we're going to give you the opportunity to share your story full. We're not going to have you on for 2 hours and give you 20 minutes of airtime on that. Now, one of the things that you had said, I believe in your book, is that Missouri's in the top 10 as far as states seeing UFOs. It ranks up in the top 10. And
consistently.
Yeah, and you said it's the other states around you don't rank near as much. And so that kind of leads to a question, is why in the world is Missouri getting so much attention? I mean, why not Illinois or Indiana or any of those other states? What is it about Missouri that makes it a hot spot? For
Yeah,
these
it's
flat.
not about population because as far as population goes, we should be much lower in the rankings, but we're not. So there's a lot going on in our state. I think it has everything to do with the amount of water we have in our
That's
state.
one of my questions.
Many, many UFOs are seen going in water, underneath water, lights in water, coming out of it. We've got film footage of high-speed UFOs going in and out of water. And so I think that's it. We've got just tons of lakes. Lake of the Ozarks is huge, Truman Lake, Missouri River, Mississippi River, and of course, many, many other rivers and streams. And yeah, it seems to be that that's the focus. But of course, we've got other things. We've got minerals, uh, crystals. I think part of it is a mining operation by the occupants of these UFOs.
Mm.
We also have, and a lot of times UFOs are seen around air bases, and we've got Whiteman Air Force Base, which is very active, and we have a few others. We have one in Kansas City, Richards Gebaur Air Force Base, and that was supposed to have been shut down several years ago, but there's activity going on there. We think that they have a major drone operation going out of Richards Gebaur. And then, of course, Offutt Air Force Base is not that far away from us in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the common themes. I'm sure, like a lot of other bases, you probably have nukes, and there's definitely a connection, as Robert Hastings, between UFOs and nukes and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yes.
I wanted to talk about this real quick. I was watching an episode because I was doing my research, and it was either asked after a flap or after a mass UFO sighting event, but they were talking about your MUFON meetings that you guys were having there. And I guess your normal attendance was somewhere around 25, which would be, pretty normal. But after this particular flap or mass sighting, you had like 150 people show up.
Over 150 people showed up.
Yeah, I was going to say that must have been really amazing and, just inspiring for you guys.
Well, it hit the media because people were wondering. So many people had witnessed things that they wanted answers, and the media was covering it. So, yeah, we had a lot of people coming in to report their sightings or just see what was happening. And what's odd, we had so much going on during the 2011 flap. It wasn't just UFOs. There were other things happening too. With the main thing being, the UFO flap started on the 4th. The night before, on the 3rd, baby Lisa was kidnapped. And this was an 18-month-old baby. And some of the media, it was a bit all over the media. They were there like 24 hours a day. And on one of the channels, they interviewed a couple of little boys who had been up late. They weren't supposed to be awake, but they were. I think one was spending the night at the house or something. And they were looking out the window, and they were interviewed by the media, and they said they saw a monster with a baby walking into the woods.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I just kind of put two and two together, and I just wonder if there isn't a correlation between the UFOs and this, what would an alien look like to a child? A monster, perhaps. So there's questions about that. We don't have any more proof. The family really doesn't want to talk about it. So, and that child has never been found.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking. Yeah. Somebody was big thing talking about it where, like, especially back in, earlier centuries where people didn't know what they were seeing. And so they would call them fairies or call them something else, but they very well may have been, aliens of some type, but we had no reference to be able to figure out what it is. But that kind of ties a little bit to the next question, and I'm going to give you some free rein on as far as what you want people to take from the book itself. But the issue of earthquakes, and I don't remember if that came out of your book or not, but the question is, were the aliens causing these UFOs causing these earthquakes, or were the earthquakes themselves, kind of like a beehive, either attracting them or chasing them out of wherever they're hiding, or
Yeah.
what's your best guess on that?
There are just a lot of theories about it, and I've talked to earthquake experts and researchers. One in particular out of Illinois is Gary Hart. He just really studies the fault lines, and there is such a thing as earthquake lights. And for some reason, right before an earthquake, or maybe even up to a few days before an earthquake, these balls of energy, these balls of light will be emitted from the ground. So we think that that's a natural occurrence that has something to do with the earthquake. But then we also have UFO sightings around the time of earthquakes. And of course, in Missouri, we have the New Madrid Fault, and we have, well, there are multiple side faults that come off of it that go across the state. And I have found a correlation between some of these major fault lines, including the 1973 Piedmont and Southeast Missouri UFO flap that was worldwide with over 500 sightings in a short period of time that were reported to law enforcement, and then many more sightings that weren't reported. But this made national news with Walter Cronkite. There's a major fault going right through there, right through that area, right off the New Madrid Fault. So perhaps the UFOs are getting energy from this, just like they do with tornadoes. If you look at some footage of tornadoes, you'll see UFOs going in and out.
Wow.
Especially like the F5 tornado that hit Joplin a few years ago. I saw them myself. So I'm watching the TV on the Weather Channel, and here are these UFOs going in and out of a giant F5 tornado. Are they getting energy from that? In some way that we can't understand? Anything's possible.
Yeah. My cousin lives in Joplin, and so it was devastating the community. 150 somewhere in that death toll. I can't remember exactly, but I know it was extreme. Luckily, my cousin was spared. But yeah, it's interesting that, because a lot of people talk about anti-gravity, and you go, well, how does that work how can you still manage in a tornado? I guess it has nothing to do with wind speed or something like that. But it'd be interesting the way that they figure out how they derive that energy and stuff. But as far as the book goes itself, what is it that you want people to take from the book? What's the number one thing you want them to take home after reading the book? What was the main purpose of the book?
Well, the purpose in writing it was to let people know that there's a lot going on everywhere, not just Kansas City. But Kansas City has been a major hotspot. It's probably the hotspot in the state of Missouri, although we have times when we're kind of an ebb and flow, and then other places will come up and there'll be a lot in one place. But then, Kansas City is actually pretty constant. I just wanted people to know what was going on, because most people don't really know how many UFO sightings and close encounters and encounters with ETs there are. There aren't that many people writing about it. Yes, there are some, but the general public does not realize this, because one of the things about all of the UFO reporting sites, including the National UFO Reporting Center, MUFON, and many others, is that they quit writing press releases. And the reason is the media does not want anything to do with UFOs. Now, yes, we've had some recent changes. We've had the hearings, the government admitting, Pentagon admitting, yes, there are things up in the sky. We don't know what they are. We can't explain it. They're not ours. So that has helped. And it's also helped people realize that they're not alone, and that there are places that they can report their sighting, and we will investigate it. So in MUFON, we do have boots on the ground. We have investigators, and we will investigate. MUFON is worldwide. Missouri is in a particularly active state, and we have 19 or 20 investigators now and we're all busy, every one of us.
Well, I think I found the same thing that you did, as far as just trying to research the Kansas City flaps. Is, to go to Google, or it'll take you to Wikipedia a lot of times instantly, but there isn't a lot of information out there. And so it was
No.
kind of hard. That's why I was relying a lot on your book. And because they're not reporting it. They're not writing about it. But like you said, I hope that's starting to change. One of the things that really encouraged me, and I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl, but the commercials are like the best part most of the time.
Yeah.
Of course, you had to this year because your team was there, but they had like 6 or 7 commercials about aliens and UFOs, and I kind of thought that would win.
There are a lot of people who are saying online, what is this all about? Are they trying to tell us something? Are they trying to prepare us for something? And yeah, we can speculate about that, but it is awful coincidental that they had so many commercials with UFOs in them.
Blew me away. It's like, to me, that was the best part of the Super Bowl. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to your second book right here, The Fast Movers, Evidence of High-Speed UFOs, UAPs. So my understanding is the term fast mover is a term that you coined.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to give myself credit for Wikigate because my buddy Rob's the one who broke it, and he may have said it before me. I don't know, but I'm taking credit for it anyway. So it's nice to have.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, yours will live on much longer than mine. My understanding is that they go so fast. When you say fast movers, that they go so fast that you can't really see them with the naked eye.
Most people cannot see them with the naked eye, or if they do, they just think it's a little blip and, maybe it's something with their sight or maybe a bug, something like that. They don't know what it is. The only way to really see them is to use as high a speed of camera as you can by, setting the video camera on the highest frames per second that is possible. Even in your phone, you can do that. You can upgrade the settings. So instead of like 24 frames per second, you might get 60 frames per second. That makes a big difference. Of course, on my wish list is, 1,000 frames per second camera. I may do a GoFundMe for that because we need it. But you can still pick things out in video. And what we found is that some of these objects can be clocked, because if you've got one frame and it's in one place, and then next frame it's in a different place, you can measure the distance and you can measure the speed.
Yeah.
And one of the co-authors of the book, Wayne Lawrence, is a math expert and a video analyst as well. And he picks a frame, frame by frame. So we're talking, if we have a several minute video, it takes a long time for him to go through it. Well, he's clocked some of these things between 3,000 and 12,000 miles per hour. Well, you're just not going to see that if it's close to you.
Yeah.
What we found is, and oddly, during the 2019 UFO flap in Kansas City, where we had 3 silver objects sitting over the city for 6 hours, not moving, there were fast movers racing around these objects. So we think that the fast movers were investigating what these things were. I'm of the opinion that they were probably some type of top secret balloons with capabilities that are not normal. But the other investigators think that they were probably bona fide UFOs. But whatever they were, they attracted fast movers. And so I encourage people to just take video of nothing in the sky. Daytime, dusk is a good time. Nighttime, not so good for catching these things. Just because of the nature of a regular camera, unless you have night vision. Turn the cell phone sideways, put it on the highest frames per second you can, and hold steady, or put it on a tripod. Take about a 5 minute, or not 5 minutes, 30-second to 1 minute video, and then go back, put it in a video editing program, and go back frame by frame. And
that would be interesting.
You will see stuff, guaranteed.
So there's a lot more out there than what we can see.
Yes.
Now, I did have a question for you, because this is a completely new term for me. But what is quantum UFO observation technique?
Okay. That's a term that Bill Spicer and I came up with to describe what he and I do, and then we've trained other people to do it. He independently came up with a method, and I independently came up with a method. But combined together, it's pretty much the same thing. What it is putting yourself into a slightly altered state of consciousness, like meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in a deep meditative state, but just a light meditative state. And then you send a telepathic message out to any benevolent entities that might be out there to show themselves. It's a very simple thing. And many times they do. Now, Bill has really got this down to a science because he practices it every day. I don't practice it every day, but he does. And he gets these amazing photographs, still photographs, video of these fast movers. And so they slow down and they allow him to get pictures of them. So he's getting structure. I mean, they're really craft. They're not something else.
So how does that differ? I'm not an expert at all in CE5, but how does that differ from CE5? Isn't that
it very much the same as CE5. CE5 is meditating and sending a telepathic message out. It's a different name for the same thing, and there were things that were discovered independently.
Okay.
So we could call it, because we think that this is on a quantum telepathic level.
Right.
That's why we named it that.
Okay. Another question I had for you, and I think I know what you mean, but I thought I'd ask it and just broaden the question a little bit, is in the book, you say that they are among us. And so when you make a statement like that, the question is, are they among us out there, or are they among us right here?
Right here.
And that's why I say, because I was fascinated when Robert Bigelow told James Fox that they walk among us. And that was just kind of chilling to think about it. I mean, depending on whether they're friendly or not, but just the thought that, you could be walking right by somebody. And so you think it's both. They're out there and they're right here among us. Do you think they're hybrids, or are they just mimic humans, or how is it that we don't notice them?
Well, there are some that look exactly like humans. Mm-hmm. For instance, Valiant Thor looks like a human being. He introduced himself to me in 1985 and appeared to me. There are hybrids that are walking among us that look mostly human. They might look a little bit off, but not to where you would say screaming, no, that's not a human being. But then we've got, and that's 3D, okay? That's in our 3D world.
Right.
But there are more dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So someone like me who's psychic sees higher dimensions. These fast movers are in 5th dimension because they move so fast. And ETs are also vibrating at a very, very high rate. So they are in higher dimensions. And when somebody sees one, they're usually in an altered state of consciousness. They are just waking up, or they're just going to sleep. And because many of these stories of abductions or contact, the person describes, I was just falling asleep, or I woke up in the middle of the night, something like that. So you're still in a little bit of an altered state, and that's how they could see them. And then a person will say, they just disappeared in front of my eyes. Well, I had firsthand account on an investigation where an ET appeared to me. I could see it, but nobody else could. And there were 5 other people there. Mm-hmm. And then he disappeared, and he appeared again 3 times. And I finally, after I got to thinking about that, I thought, you know what? That ET was there the whole time. It was just my state of consciousness that allowed me to see him for a short period. And then when when I got anxious about it, a little bit afraid about it, then that changed my state of consciousness, and I couldn't see him anymore. Couldn't interact in his world. But they're walking around all the time. They're in, they're in the same space we are, just a different dimension, but they're also in our dimension.
So when you're in that altered state, how vivid are they? Are they like shadows? Are they clear? I mean, what is it that you see?
They're usually transparent.
Mm.
But if they purposely lower their vibration enough to be in our 3D world, then they look solid. But most of the time, if you are looking into a higher dimension, they're going to appear transparent, but still very clear, very detailed. Now you could draw a picture.
Okay. Is this similar to what Kathleen Martin? I was at a conference at McMinnville, and she was talking about the need to raise our vibration levels. Is that similar to what you're talking about, to be able to communicate with them?
Yes, that's what I've been teaching for some time now.
Okay. It was kind of new to me a couple of years ago when I heard it, and I started off kind of as a nuts and bolts guy, but then I've had my own experiences that kind of have changed some things I buried in the past that, I didn't want to kind of look at, but since I kind of opened myself up to the paranormal, I just revisited some things, and it's amazing how your opinion can change when you go that direction. One of the questions I had for you, it's kind of a personal question about the book itself. Why did you do a collaboration on this? Was it because you guys each had expertise in different fields, or just because you thought, hey, this would be fun to write a book together with the three of you?
Well, I realized we're all friends, and, we've done work together, we've done conferences together. And I realized that we each had discovered fast movers on our own, but in a little bit slightly different ways. So I thought that it would be a good idea to combine all of that so that everybody could see the different ways it's possible to see them and to document them. Now, Wayne discovered them simply by taking video. He was seeing some very fast moving things. He's like, what is that? So he starts taking video from his home over Blue Springs Lake. And lo and behold, he finds fast movers going in and out of the lake, and he was able to record that. And nothing would happen when they hit the water. There was no change. It was like they were just going through butter and coming in and out all the time at very high rates of speed. And so then he got interested, and he took my remote viewing class, and so did Bill.
Is that how you met them, or?
No, I had known them before.
Okay.
And I knew that Bill was the first one who started capturing the fast movers. And then it got my attention, and I realized that I'd been seeing them my whole life, but I didn't know what they were. So I started my own technique of asking them to slow down so I could get a better look. Well, what was happening was I was slowing my time down. I wasn't slowing them down. They weren't slowing down for me. I was slowing my time down. So as a person who uses their psychic center all the time, I think that is why it came fairly easily to me. And I do that now when I'm out and I see something. I'll ask them to slow down so I can get a better look. So, we all have our different techniques, and that's why I decided to ask them if they wanted to collaborate, and they did. And we're currently working on a second book.
Oh, wow. That'd be exciting. Quick question before I forget it. Are there any places that people can go to see those videos? Are they out in the public anywhere? Just so that people get an idea what this might look like?
Nope, but they will be soon. There is a documentary coming.
Okay, that would be good, because people, I'm sure I'm curious already since you mentioned that. I'd like to kind of see what they look like for myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people. So you're saying just hold on. There's a documentary coming out.
We're working on it this year. I might have it done by the end of the year.
Well, this is the perfect transition time to go ahead and move to remote viewing. I barely dip my feet in the pond of remote viewing. I've read 3 books: Ingleswan's Penetration, Lynn Buchanan's 7 Sense, and Joe McMoneagle's Mind Trek, and just pretty profound. I think the thing that convinced me first about remote viewing was just to find out that the government had spent millions of dollars, through the Stanford Research Institute, and that this was legitimate. This wasn't people making stuff up and doing it. But like I said, I've had a journey of my own I've had to go on, but that helped me to go in there. And so then when I started, those names were all part of it at one time or another. And so, like I said, I'm definitely not anywhere near the level where you're at, but I've got I've got my feet just barely in the pond, and I plan on going deeper. But the stuff that I was reading about was more what they called controlled remote viewing. And so can you kind of explain the difference between what you do and the difference between that and controlled remote viewing?
Yep. Controlled remote viewing requires 2 or 3 people. One is the remote viewer, one is the handler, so to speak, and then another person is the one who creates something or puts something in an envelope. And then, they may go out to another location. And so the second person doesn't really know what's in the envelope. There could just be a number on the outside of it or something, and then they hand it to the remote viewer. And I can see how and why they wanted to create a scientific method for this to make it seem more credible. However, I discovered what I call natural remote viewing after I was trying to find a missing person in the early 90s. This friend of mine, who I'd been doing readings for years, she knew I was psychic, and she called me and said her niece was missing. And so I'm thinking, how am I going to find this girl? So I have her on the phone, and I just kind of put myself in a light trance state. And then I looked down, something said, open your eyes. So I opened my eyes. I see this cord line coming out of my solar plexus. So I followed it, and I found, bottom line is I found the girl. She had been kidnapped. They saved her, got the police, saved her, and shut down this operation.
Wasn't it human trafficking?
Yeah,
I think I heard that story, and she was in a shed, and I don't remember if they hadn't looked there earlier, but you got a hold of them and said, go back and check and relook. And when they got there, they found her. And I think the story, if I remember right, they were going to take her that night and send her to some other
next morning. The next morning she would be gone. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how I discovered, and this is probably sending my etheric body out, not my astral body. Because for most people, and me included, I do astral travel. I have to have my body asleep to do that. But with the etheric body, which is just a little bit lighter than the astral, it's easier to go out. And that's how I discovered how to do that. That being said, it's not just something that everybody can do. So you've got to have your psychic center really working and practice with it every day. The pineal gland is key to that. It needs to be activated, and it needs to be decalcified. So, those are all things that need to be done. And I do teach a course on remote viewing that every single person who's taken it so far has said that they have greatly improved with it.
I was going to see if I could find that one. That's the book right there, the remote viewing workbook. And so that's the one you were referencing as well.
A person can use that on their own, or they can take the course, and I use the workbook in the course.
Well, one thing that I noticed, and I think you probably would agree with this, I think what you're talking about is you got to spend time, you got to develop it. But the surprising thing to me from all three of the different individuals that I've read from is that they think this is just part of being human.
Yes.
The ability to do this is just, most people haven't tapped into it. I wanted to read something real quick. I watched an episode with Ingle Swan, and it kind of blew me away. And I don't think he was being derogatory in any way. And I think it was ultimately leading to what I just said. But it's an old episode where he was on Coast to Coast Radio with Art Bell. And one of the things that just blew me away, because people have him in, high standings as far as who he is, as the greatest remote viewer and stuff like that. But it was interesting. He said he didn't, in that interview, his own words is he didn't like to be thought of as a psychic. He liked to be called a perception researcher, and probably partly because it was on a scientific level and they knew that they couldn't get the money they needed and stuff like that. But he didn't even like being called the greatest remote viewer ever. He just felt like there were other people like Richard Sherman and stuff like that. And the other thing is he thought, this isn't, why are you singling me out? He goes, this, you don't do it alone. This is a team
effort. And so, like I said, I think the reason that he did that was to make sure that you just didn't put people on pedestals where think, well, they've got this and I could never be that. And maybe we could never get to the level of Ingle Swann or Richard Sherman. But I think you would agree that, everybody has the ability. It may be dormant, but if you took the time to study and invest in it, you'd be surprised.
Absolutely. We all have the same physiology. Therefore, we do all have the same abilities within us, but we have to practice it, just like music or sports, anything like that. You have to practice and be dedicated with it. I mean, it's something that I do and use every single day of my life. And so I do private readings for people. So that keeps me active. Right. So I'm constantly using it. But everybody has the ability.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was interesting, we talk about remote viewing that Ingle said as well, which give me a lot more respect for Hal Puthoff. I kind of respected him already, but he basically said that Hal Puthoff is like the great grandfather or the grandfather of remote viewing. He said basically that remote viewing wouldn't have seen the light of day if it wasn't for him and bringing it out into the public, that he gave it the credibility and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. It made me look at Ingle Swann differently. I didn't realize he was that humble. I mean, he's like, why are you singling me out and stuff? So pretty impressed. It's too bad he's not around us. We couldn't interview him or bring him on. One of the things that you've already mentioned on it, but I want to kind of touch base with it a little bit because it goes with what I read in the other books. Whether you're talking about Ingle Swann, whether you're talking about Lynn Buchanan, whether you're talking about Joe McMoneagle, they all see this, the purpose of remote viewing, at least one aspect of it, is to benefit humanity. And so I know that you have done that. It's on your sheet here that you've directly, at least 60 different cases, and where you've, like you helped find that missing girl and had something about theft and stuff like that. So can you kind of explain to us just for a minute how you have used this gift that you have developed, that you learned and developed to help humanity?
Well, after that incident I told you about in the early 90s, word started getting around with the police departments and private detectives. And so they will call. I don't call the police. I never call the police. They have to call me. And the reason is other psychics have done so when they think they have information, and then they become a suspect.
Oh, wow.
Because you have too much information.
Yeah.
And in their mind, this work is woo-woo stuff.
You know too much.
Yeah. They usually call as a last resort. They're stuck on a case. They're trying to find a murderer or a kidnapper or something. And by the time I get involved, it's usually too late to save the person. And but I can help give some resolution to the families if I can find a body, if I can find a perpetrator, if I can give them some pieces of information that will put the pieces together. I'm happy to do that. And I do that at no charge for that type of work. A lot of times I'll get details that nobody had a clue about, like another person involved in a crime, a license plate number, a description of a vehicle that's involved, something like that. And so for me, I wish that people would call me immediately.
Yeah.
Right after they call the police, call me. I'll probably be able to locate a missing person. But that being said, at least I can help give the family some resolution with these unfortunate circumstances.
It's got to be interesting, though, if they find the perpetrator and they've got information that you gave them, and then it goes to court and the defense is asking, well, how do you know this? How did that work out?
Now, here's my rule. They can't put my name down in any report. They can't tell anyone they talk to me on the phone. They take all the credit themselves.
Right.
So, I don't want to be on any list. I don't want any bad guys to know who I am.
So they've got to be creative in how they explain how they figured this
Yeah.
out. Okay.
Yeah, they do.
All right. Another question I wanted to bring up is that you are not just a remote viewer, you're actually a trainer for remote viewing. And so we mentioned the book that you have out. And so you offer a class. What can people expect to learn when they take this class from you?
They're going to learn a lot. They're going to learn about different states of consciousness and how to purposely alter their consciousness using different techniques. And we practice meditating during that time and using different tools for meditation. We use practice things that will help you stay or begin a meditative state, such as adult coloring. Something like that is very helpful to start with and then begin your meditative process, because it's doing something that's repetitive over and over and you're concentrating on one thing. Things like staring at a candle, using a pendulum, doing dowsing, things like that will get you in that state of mind. And then we talk about leaving the personal body. Two different ways of remote viewing: leaving the body out on that line that I was telling you about earlier, using the etheric body to go anywhere in the universe, not just on the planet, but anywhere they want. And the other method is by sending your consciousness out through your third eye. And that could be someone close to you, standing right in front of you, talking to you on the phone, or like we are on Zoom, something like that. That method seems to work better with people that are close, and it's also instantaneous. So with my methods, you don't need another person to help. It is a good idea to record, because when I go into an altered state, I don't remember everything I talk about. So I like to have some type method of recording that. Or if I'm talking to another person, they need to take notes or record on their end.
So it probably takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that. And so I think that's probably going to be the challenge for some people. And I'm ex Navy guy. I've done my years of education. And so I find I like to work outside of the box. And so I have a difficulty sometimes when you put me in a structured setting. But it sounds from what McGonigal said and what you're saying is that's the best way. Is there any way other than that that isn't quite as structured? Because I know some people are going to struggle with anything that's structured, or is that the only way that to teach?
My method is not really structured. It's not a scientific method like CRB, and it doesn't require someone else. Once you know this, you can just sit down and do it.
Okay.
It's easy once you get the hang of it and practice doing something every day that uses your psychic center. And then also critically important is getting that pineal gland decalcified. And for, fluoride is the number one reason why the pineal glands are calcified. And that's another conspiracy theory that they put that in our water and other things in order to keep it calcified, so we wouldn't ask so many questions. So,
my wife's dead against it for health reasons and stuff. But it doesn't make any sense that, there are a lot of health concerns that go along with it as well, why they're putting it in our water. My question for you is, how did you know, and this will probably help a lot of other people, how did you know when you were ready to be a trainer? Where you moved on from being the student, from learning it, to the point that you knew that you could teach it to others and help them learn it?
That would be the day that I did a convention, a small conference, about 300 people. And I did a presentation, and I remote viewed people from the audience, randomly came up, and I scanned their bodies. I do what's called X-ray vision, looking inside the body and find problems. And so, I did that and just blew their minds. It was instantaneous. And I did, several people in a row. And I thought, you know what? Yep, I know this now. I'm ready to share it with other people. So
how
yeah.
did they take that? Because I imagine some of it wasn't so good. You know, if you saw the problem in their body, it's a problem, obviously.
No, they were glad to know it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and then they would go get it checked out, and it would turn out. In some cases, some people thought they had a problem and they didn't.
Oh wow.
It was something else. It wasn't anything bad. But now, yeah, I do that so often, several times a week, that it's just like I'm inside the body looking at the problem. So I can describe what it looks like. I don't have a medical background, but I can tell people what it looks like and where there needs to be attention. And sometimes I can see exactly, like gallstones, for instance. I can see those very, very easily. Other times I might see infection, or I might see a blockage somewhere. And, some things keep coming up over and over again, like pancreas and gallbladder. I mean, those just super common to be inflamed. So, yeah, it's super easy, super fast, and very clear and very accurate. And there are some times where, when I do a private reading, I don't want to know anything to start with. So I will look at the energy field, and that will tell me a lot. Then I'll look at the chakra systems. That will tell me a lot. And then I look inside the body. And the person usually knows some things that they might have a problem with anyway. And when I'm done with that initial reading, they'll always give me feedback. And they're usually surprised at how accurate I was. So from then on, if whatever I say, they're going to pay attention to and get some medical attention if they need it.
Yeah, you proved it. Was there a difference between the amount of men and the amount of women who actually come forward to get this done?
Nope, it's about half and half.
Wow, that surprises me, because I was just talking about it on Sunday. We men tend like to ignore things and kind of hope they go away. So that's what surprised me about that statistic, because I had to go to the doctor a couple of weeks ago. I had a torn rotator cuff. That wasn't why I went. Ooh. The only reason I went is because I didn't want to go, but I had to go, or he wasn't going to fill my blood pressure medicine for me. But I think
that's how men are.
Yeah, I typify men very much. That's why when you said that, I thought we're dumb, in that sense, that we just kind of think, well, if we ignore it, it'll go away. But and I mentioned it, that I have that other voice in my head that speaks the truth, knowing that if you catch something sooner, it's always better than catching it later. And the success and as far as being saved, especially if it's cancer or something like that, you're always better to catch it early rather than late. All right, let's move on to the last one. And that's the one I think you can really enlighten us on. And that's MUFON itself. How long have you been with MUFON, and what does MUFON stand for? So everybody knows.
Stands for the Mutual UFO Network.
Okay.
It was actually founded in St. Louis in 1969, right after Project Blue Book was closed.
Right.
Quote. And it was called the Midwest, or the Mutual UFO Network.
Midwest UFO.
Yeah, the Midwest UFO Network to start with. And what we do is scientifically investigate UFOs. Like I said earlier, it's worldwide. We have the largest UFO investigative organization in the world. There are people who will do site investigations or phone investigations, take the reports very seriously, and then we have MUFON Lab in St. Louis, the only MUFON Lab.
Oh, wow.
And so we take evidence from all over the world, send it to that lab, where our chief laboratory analyst, Lynn Mann, can do analysis in various different ways. Of course, they don't have all the equipment they need. We'd like to have more equipment. It costs a lot of money for some of these things. But and there are investigators everywhere. So I like MUFON. I joined in 1996. I became Assistant State Director in 2009. And Debbie Ziegelmeyer is our State Director. She and I She's in St. Louis. I'm in Kansas City. We've been working together. When we started working there, it was only the two of us. We had no other field investigators.
Wow.
And so we've been through thick and thin together. We've been on some wild cases. And what's interesting to me is that there are some common things that keep happening over and over, I've noticed. If a person experiences a close encounter, it's probably not their first.
Right.
Some of these people are lifelong experiencers from the time they were in the crib. Many of them are. And so when we go on site, we're going to see something. And we usually do. And we usually get it on film. It's crazy. It's wild. And I love doing it. I like doing things that are out of the ordinary. I've been psychic since I was very, very young. I knew by the age 2.5 that I could see things other people couldn't see around me. But they didn't stop me. They didn't say, no, you can't do that, or that's bad. My parents had an open mind, and I wouldn't say they encouraged me, but they didn't discourage me from learning more about it. And I think that helps a lot. That helps people who are interested in the paranormal to have an open mind about it and be open to anything. And the thing is, though, with MUFON, it has to be kept with UFOs only and extremely scientific.
Right.
So for me, I can't fit everything into one box like that. So I have another organization I started in 1992 called Quest Investigation Group, and we investigate everything paranormal. So if that person, it could be Sasquatch, it could be ghosts, hauntings, Mothman. Been doing a lot of Mothman stuff. So I have 2 different organizations, and I keep both of them separate.
Kind of like your own version of Expedition X, as far as investigating all these different weird phenomena going on.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah,
it kind of reminded me, I was watching the first episode for this year, and like I said, I had something happen. I'll just share it with you. It's not about me, but I'll share this because it kind of goes with the conversation. And I'm a pastor, actually. Kind of blows people away when they find out that I am. But I was doing a memorial service about 7 years ago, and we had all the doors shut, all the windows shut, and we had the lady's urn on the communion table at the front of the church. And we had her picture on the right side. We had flowers on the left side. And out of nowhere, this wind came rushing down that center aisle, and it knocked over her picture. And I remember when it happened, I've never seen it before, and it's never happened since, but it just felt like it was angry. That's the impression I got. Maybe it's because it knocked the thing over, the picture over, but it just blew me away. And then I was watching the first episode of Expedition X, and it gave me absolute chills because they were going to this forest in Romania, Transylvania, close to there, and it was a haunted forest. And they had this area that was clear called the Rotunda, and it had been that way. They even showed an ancient map where nothing grows there. But anyway, they were going to go out there and investigate. 15 years earlier, Gates had been out there, and his cameraman, Evan B. Stone, Josh Gates had been out there, and his cameraman, Evan B. Stone, was sitting out there alone, and it was on camera, and it looked different on camera. But anyway, he described it that he was sitting there, and all of a sudden this wind came shooting towards him, knocked him over, and even drug him a little bit. And I was like, wow, that's almost identical to my setting, except for the wind didn't hit me. It hit the picture. And then the other thing that blew me away, I studied Greek for a couple of years, and so I know Greek pretty well. The Greek word for spirit is pneuma. It can also mean wind. And so when I put all that together, it just blew me away. Like I said, when it happened, I just put it away. I just wasn't ready to deal with it or think about it. It was just one of those odd things. But since I've got involved with, the paranormal and the phenomena and all the different branches of it, it's kind of, just really made me reevaluate and look back at some things that happened in my life. And, whether I'm right on this or not, but I'll always believe, especially after watching that episode, I'm leaning that way heavily anyway. but I'll always believe that that was that woman's spirit. That whatever she was trying to communicate, I mean, she did it through knocking that picture over, and she was making a point. I think much like the spirit or whatever, the ghost that was in that forest was making some kind of point, you know, to Josh's crew as well and stuff. So pretty interesting stuff. Now, I almost became a field investigator. I'm a MUFON member. I think I've since 2022, something like that, maybe 21. But I got the book, and I've read that book from cover to cover. And let me tell you something, I was so impressed because it clearly is a scientific model.
Yeah.
There's no question. It's all scientific. And so I was thoroughly impressed. The reason I didn't do it is just I'm so busy, absolutely busy, that I didn't feel like I would have the time necessary to commit to it. And so I decided that maybe too late by then, but when I retire, I'm going to, if you know, if MUFON's still there, if the disclosure hasn't happened, which I sure hope it has, you know, at least some form of it, I wanted to be a field investigator then, but very impressed with the book. Now, the other thing that I found interesting is I've heard of APRO. I wasn't really familiar with it, but when I did my research, it was interesting to learn the connections between APRO, which is the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and it went from 1952 until 1988, is that there is a connection between them and the Midwest UFO Network. And that was a gentleman by the name of Walt Andrus. And he went out, I guess, and recruited a bunch of field investigators to go out. And eventually he broke away from APRO and helped form, you know, the Midwest, what do you call it? UFO Network. I should have had that in my mind easily. But anyway, so it was just interesting to find out that those two, you know, were connected. And I guess what inspired you guys, you know, in 1969, the closing of Blue Book was actually one of the things that led to the death of APRO. And I'm not quite sure why, but that's what they were saying. And the other one was the fact that a large portion of APRO broke off, and that's how the early version of MUFON was founded. I did have one big question for you, because I'm telling you what, I have my hat. I'm involved in so many different things, and I'm tired most of the time, and I never have enough time to do everything that I want to do. Is how in the world do you do everything you do?
Well, I have a little bit of ADD, so I can't just do one thing. I have to be doing multiple things. And I do have a lot of help. So that's the only way I could get it done. With the network, my producer, Race Hobbs, he manages all the programs. And we've got nearly 30 programs now. So then my assistant, Violet Wisdom, she does a lot of writing. She does copy editing for the books. Then Maria McKenzie handles our website, but she's also a writer and a copy editor. So, and we've got volunteers who do writing. I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't do it all myself. No, but do I have too much on my plate? Yes. Yes, I do. And I can't get everything done that I want to get done. But somehow it all resolves in the end.
Well, not only besides the books, don't you have a radio program that you do every Friday?
Yeah, I do. NX News every Friday from 6 to 7.
UNX News?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so what kind of, discussions do you do? Just, is it like that one thing where you just cover everything? Anything to do with the paranormal?
If it's paranormal, I'm talking about it. We have a lot of UFO people on.
Right.
Investigators, witnesses, authors, researchers, the gamut. If it's interesting, they're going to be on the show. And I'm usually booked out 3 to 4 months in advance with my programs. It's becoming more and more popular, and the network is really gaining traction now. We've only been actually going for 2 years now. We just had our second anniversary in October. But yeah, and then we also do an annual conference in October every year called XCon.
Oh, wow.
So we're doing that in Springfield, Missouri, and we're doing that again this year. We've got a good lineup of speakers, always do, and vendors, things like that. Doing a ghost hunt at this one.
Oh, wow. That'd be fun.
So, yeah, if people who are into all paranormal, they're gonna like the network. They're gonna like our X conference every year and the magazine, UNX magazine, because we cover the gamut. We talk about fairies, gnomes, Mothman, all types of cryptids, haunted sites, places to go that are extremely unusual, like where you could go spend the night in a UFO or something like that. We're just going to cover it all.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. Well, unless you have something else you want to add, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast, and just want everybody to know that you're an author. You've got several books. You can easily find Margie Kay online. You can go to Amazon and her books are there. You can also find her where she trains for remote viewing, how to get classes, and then other stuff to do with her psychic stuff as well. And so, Margie, I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast and let you know how much I appreciate it. And we'll have to do this again sometime. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Dale. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll sign out now. Bye.
Okay.
Well, one last message to everyone, and that's just to remind you, if you like this podcast, if you like this channel, will you please go ahead and subscribe and hit that like button. Anyway, you have a great day. Bye.